The basement of the central post office smelled of whips from Ariest. The line snapped under his touch. A dozen envelopes spilled across his blotter. They were all addressed in the same looping feminine script dated February maturias, leaning over sorting tables. He sat at his desk in the dead letter office, a realm of forgotten things, where air was thick with the ghosts of unsent sentiments. The fluorescent lights of Ariel Natian, Beharia, it was a neighborhood that had once been grand, then fallen into decay and was now being reclaimed by young professionals with expensive strollers. But instead, it would have been a place of manicured lawns and secrets and behind heavy velvet curtains. He picked up the first envelope. It was addressed to a Mr. Silas Thorne. The return address was missing, looping feminine script, dated February 1974, the stamps that had sharp and type of work. There were no poems about roses or sugar. Instead, the words were sharp, written with a nib that had pressed so hard it nearly tore the parchment. Silas, the letter began, I cannot keep the lie for another season. The boy deserves to know that his father is not the hero you have painted in your stories. Every time I see him look at you with those trusting eyes, my heart breaks for the truth we are burying. Arthur felt a cold chill settle in his chest. This was not a message of love, but a confession of a fracture. It was a brutal honesty that had been delayed by a postal error, a misdirection of fate that had kept this secret buried for half a century. Arthur leaned back in his creaking, the springs groaning in protest. He thought of his own wife, Martha, who had passed away 5 years ago. Their life had been built on a foundation of simple truths and shared morning coffees. He couldn't imagine a life built on a foundation of silence. He looked at the other letters in the bundle. They were all just dying, it is witch. I'm white Maine. Where the neon signs of trendy bistros clashed with the gray stone of the cathedral. It was a crisp February evening, the air biting at his cheeks. He reached the neighborhood just as the streetlights began to hum to life, casting long, amber pools of light on the sidewalk. Number 412 was a Victorian house that had seen better days, but it possessed a stubborn dignity. The porch was sagging, hit the brands and preening for Kayleys. Please, come in. My name is Evelyn. I've waited a lifetime for these, though I didn't know it until this very second. Heavy oak furniture, lace doilies, and the scent of lemon wax and old tea. Evelyn led him into a small parlor where a fire crackled in the hearth, providing the only real warmth in the room. She sat in a high-backed velvet chair, her movements stiff with age. Arthur sat opposite her, feeling like a giant in a dollhouse. He handed her the bundle. Her fingers trembled as she touched her thumb tracing the faded stamps. He lives in the carriage house out back. He drinks too much and talks too little, believing to this day that he was abandoned by the only woman who ever loved him. Arthur felt a lump in his throat. The weight of the letters was no longer in his pocket. It was in the air between them. Alkeniide as expoised as admire. I've seen thousands of messages that never made it. Some were bills, some were advertisements. But the ones that matter, the ones people really care about, are always about the truth. I've learned that a lie is like cancer. It doesn't matter how old it is. It still eats away at the soul. Julian might be broken, but maybe he's broken because he's been living in the dark. Light hurts when you first see it, but it's the only way to see the path out. Julian asked, his voice gravelly and deep. Julian looked down at them, his eyes squinting in the dim light of the porch. What's this? Some more of your old catalogs. No, Julian, Evelyn said, her voice finally finding its strength. These are letters from your Aunt Clara. They were written in 1974. They were lost in the mail for 50 years. This gentleman, Mr. Pendergast, found them and brought them to us tonight. He told his might be Angelio's important, it said, signed then to take years. I'm so sorry, Julian. I knew she was trying to tell us something, but I was too weak to listen. I let him rule this house with his shadows. I am just as much to blame. He had done his job. The letters had been delivered, but he realized that it was only the beginning. The aftermath was where the real work happened. He watched as Julian finally looked up, his eyes red and swollen. The man looked at Arthur, not with anger, but with a bewildered kind of gratitude. Why? Julian asked, why did you bring these? You could have just thrown them away. Nobody would have known moment. "Wait," Julian called out. Arthur stopped and turned. "Thank you, Mr. Pendergast. Most people just bring the mail. You brought my life back?" Arthur nodded, a small, humble smile touching his lips. "It was an express delivery, Julian. Just a bit delayed." "The Bills are the ones who don't get the letters," Arthur replied calmly. "The ones who get them, they become something else. They become homeless to find Annette's trends of best both in the dead letter office. But today the room didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like a library of possibilities." He looked at the crates of unsorted mail with new eyes. How many other lives were waiting to be reclaimed? How many other truths were buried under layers of dust? His Trevor Sangman's names with online databases and using his old-school knowledge of the city's changing street names. By the time the clock struck 5, he had a dozen letters ready for personal delivery. Like a detective of the heart, a man on a mission that was far more important than any pension or gold watch. He had time. Arthur still alive, 2 glass towers and high-end boutiques. He was looking for the daughter of the Vietnam soldier. Her name was Sarah, and according to his research, she was now a prominent lawyer with an office overlooking the harbor. He entered the lobby, feeling out of place in his worn coat and sensible shoes. The receptionist was young and polished, her hair a perfect blonde bob. "Can I help you, sir? Do you have an appointment to this name, Professor's Downs?" "Tiaftas require testig reviven, with astur im sankscape the city in any way." "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea. I'm alive. She's 90. I'm going to take this to her right now." "I'm here to see Sarah Jenkins," Arthur said softly. "The address was blurred by the rain, I think. It's been waiting for you for 56 years. "I think," Arthur said, his voice steady and clear, "that this is the best Valentine's Day I've ever had." He walked out of the post office for the last time. Not as a man who was finished, but as a man who was just beginning. He had a list of addresses in his pocket, a bag full of old letters, and